All righty. Let's get rocking and rolling today. So good to have you with me. I love doing these. I love sharing information and getting people exposed to good content. All righty, and Instagram is really having problems getting connected. We're going to start without them. Today, we are going to go into an area that we've never talked about on these webinars before, and that is sclera indicators. When we talk about iridology, we often are referring to the iris of the eye, but last week we took a glimpse at the pupil and discovered that there was some great information lurking there for us. And today we're going to dip our toes into the concept of the sclera and what the sclera has to share with us. I would love it if you would each take just a moment, regardless of where you're joining me, whether you're on Facebook or Instagram or the webinar, and just let me know what your background is. Do you have iridology training? Are you a health professional? That will just help me to be able to fine tune this little workshop to meet your needs a little bit more effectively. While you are doing that, just reminding you that I'm just going to restart restart the Instagram because they really didn't want to join us. Let's just get this going. There we go. We're just going to give them the title page for just a second here. There we go. Okay. And just letting them try to connect. I apologize for this little delay. You know, technology is great when it works, right? And Instagram is really not wanting to connect. I may have to post this to them later because it doesn't seem like they want to be on with us. So here we go. We've got Elizabeth joining us on the webinar. Detox specialist, lymphatic iridologist, feline nurse, former hospice nurse, and soon-to-be chaplain. Congratulations, some beautiful credentials under your belt there, Elizabeth. Okay, so we're going to start where we always need to start, and that is this information is meant for your education only. It is not meant to diagnose or prescribe. You are responsible for any results you get from using this information, whether it's good or bad, right? And Julie says she's an RN with no iridology experience, but very interested. Julie, you've come to the right place. We're going to have so much fun today. So much fun as we actually look at the sclera. I'm just going to pop this down there. Okay, Instagram has finally joined us. This is good. All right. So while we are giving people just another minute to join us, I would love to take just a moment, if it's okay with you, to introduce myself. Some of you have been with me for a while. I feel like some of you and I should be going out for lunch or something because you've been hanging out with me for quite a while. Some of you are very new to me, and I welcome all of you, each and every one of you. I'm glad to have you with me. My name is Judith Cobb. I am a master herbalist, natural nutrition clinical practitioner, and an IPA level 3 certified instructor. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what that means because this is pretty amazing stuff. For many, many years, IPA had 2 levels, level 1 and 2, and you needed those 2 levels to become a certified iridologist, and you needed those 2 levels at a very high functioning level to qualify as a teacher. This last summer, IPA introduced level 3, and I am now one of 4 level 3 certified instructors in the world. One of 4, actually 5, because Ellen Tark Jensen is being grandfathered in. And so, yeah, there are only 5 of us in the world so far. And there were only about 15 people who took the training this past summer. So this is a very, very unique qualification. And it's a very tough qualification to earn. I have been in the holistic health world as a coach for over 4 decades now. In those years, I've written several books, including, and then they were self-distributed, so you're not going to find them hanging out anywhere, and they're all out of print right now. One of these days, I'll take time to update them. Pregnancy Naturally, the Herbal Birth Kit Handbook, Healthy Kids Naturally, The Essential Guide to Nature Sunshine's Products, Biokinesiology and Color Therapy Level 1 and 2, and the Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology textbook, which is the textbook that my students receive when they are enrolled in my dynamic iridology course. I've also created and taught a lot of courses over the years. Way back when the earth was young and grass was green, I started teaching herbology. There was nothing available where I lived, and I had studied hard and done correspondence work back when correspondence meant mailing things in and getting things returned to you by post. And so about 35 years ago, I created a 20-hour introduction to herbs that was meant for people who wanted to use herbs in their families, and they were buying herbs that were commercially prepared. We weren't talking growing, we weren't talking preparing or making your own formulas. It was just, when you see these in the health food store, what could you do with them? That course was so popular, those students asked for another 16 hours of advanced training. So we then put together a course that examined formulations and how to tell what other things a formulation could be used for beyond what was actually on the front of the label. And so, and then we designed the biokinesiology and color therapy level 1 and 2. You might know this better under the banner of muscle testing and color therapy. For a little while, I was a certified prenatal educator. And so I designed and taught antenatal classes. That was a lot of fun because pregnancy, fertility, and women's health are passions of mine. And then, of course, when I certified with IPA as an instructor, I designed my own version of their level 1 and 2 program because I just felt like it needed to be taught in a different order than what they were suggesting, which is why I roll level 1 and level 2 into one course. It's some teachers teach it as level 1 and then separately level 2. But I feel like it rolls better with the way I've rearranged the pieces. And my students seem to agree that it's a very logical process that I take them through. Maria, you are acupuncture naturopath and Dorn. Congratulations on the Dorn. That is not an easy one to get either. There's not very many teachers. So I'm inviting you to stay with me to the end of today's workshop to learn more about the Dynamic Iridology Assessment System course that will be starting in February. I am also a proud member of the Canadian Association of Holistic Nutrition Professionals and the Canadian Association of Natural Nutrition Practitioners. These are both organizations that you have to produce credentials for. If you don't have the right credentials, you don't get in. The Alberta Herbalist Association, I'm a professional member of that organization. And again, to be a professional member, you have to produce credentials. So that is part of my background over the last 40 years. And as with all of us, and you'll all resonate with this, I'm never finished learning, right? Never finished learning. There's always something more to learn. And that's what keeps this exciting and fresh. So again, if you haven't already introduced yourself in the chat box or in the conversation or comments box, please do so. I would love to know a little bit about you. And we are, again, hang out with me till the end of our presentation. We will be done by noon for sure because I go into teaching one of my classes right then. When we do iridology, we look at the iris, right? That makes good sense, right? And we look at the pupil. That might have been news to some of you last week when we touched on that. And we look at the sclera. Now, for how many of you is this an aha moment or a moment of revelation where you had not known before that iridologists also look at the sclera? And if you are a trained iridologist, did you learn sclerology as well? I would love to know that in the chat box. Each of these different parts of the eye give us different information, but in a way that literally usually corroborate each other. Right? Remember, the iris is inherent. The pupil is a lot inherent and somewhat dynamic. And the white of the eye is very dynamic and a little inherent. So when we take that whole picture and pad it up on top of what our client has asked for help with, and on top of our conversation with them where we're asking them questions and where we are finding out what their personal and family history are, we now get a really good depth to the information. And I'm seeing comments that Some of you who've got some iridology under your belt have a little bit of it, of this under their belt. All right. And Tina Marie learned Matt Bernard Jensen. Ooh, that's cool. That's cool. All right. So again, quick review of what we've done already, because, you know, we've got some new content for some of you today, right? This sclerology thing could be brand new for you. When we're looking at the iris, when we're doing iridology, we do look primarily at the iris because it is like 99.9% inherent. And we look at the pupil, so the pupil edge and the pupil shape, because that also gives us some inherent and some dynamic information. Now, when we look at the sclera, again, we are looking at things that are dynamic primarily. Now, you already know this intuitively. Have you ever had one of those really hard, ugly cries where, you know, after you finished crying, you go in the bathroom and you splash cool water on your face and you look at your eyes and your eyes are bloodshot, right? And you're, oh my goodness, I can't go back out there looking like this. You do anyways. And when you go back in to look in the mirror an hour or so later, the eyes have settled down. Right, the eyes are extremely, the sclerae are extremely dynamic. So what about the blood vessels though that are in here? Have they always been there, or do they become more obvious over time? That's the question we are going to look at a little bit today. And I'm going to introduce you to a few different sclera markers. Now, there's quite a few of them. We obviously don't have time to do a full sclera class today. That's what you get into dynamic iridology for, right? Is to get a whole lot more sclerology as well. These are the eyes. This is the eye of a client of mine who I actually have worked with her since before she was born. I was taking care of her parents for a few years before they decided to conceive this girl. She is now 23 years of age. She had been coming to me throughout her youth, her childhood and youth. Her mother would bring her in. When she was in grade 12, that's 12th grade for you in the States. When she was in grade 12, her mother brought her into me. It would have been about March or April of the year. And she said, here's the story. This girl's name is Anita. She had been at school one day and she was a good student, worked really hard, very talented in many, many ways. And one of her classmates decided it would be funny to hit her on the head with a textbook, and not just a little tap, but a good whack, like a good solid whack, a whack that sent her flying. Right, she landed on the floor with a 3rd-degree concussion. Her mom brought her into me several weeks later because they went to the concussion center here in Calgary, and they literally kept her flat on her back in a dark room for weeks on end. And this is really important because this is grade 12. She's missing out on crucial education time. We do end of semester exams here that count for 1/3 of the final grade. Right? And those are your grades that get you into post-secondary. And so here she was losing this critical time. When she was healed enough and stable enough, and we did some phone appointments in the interim, her mother did bring her into me and we were able to shoot this photo of her eye. What we're looking at here is what's called a trauma fork. Do you see this here, this blood vessel that splits? This is an indicator, and this is just another view of the same trauma fork. This tells us where the impact was. And for her, the impact was on a corner of her head, right? This is her left eye, and it's on the medial side. So it actually would have probably been right there, probably actually on this corner of her forehead. And when we see a trauma fork, it says there has been a significant impact. The closer the legs of the fork come to the iris, the more significant the impact. And so when we see this, it says significant impact that really has affected whatever areas, and this is spanning up into her brain area. The length of the arms show us how far reaching the effect is in her body. right? Now, unfortunately, I don't have her before pictures. I hadn't seen her in quite some time, and the print photos were quite faded. So I cannot tell you if this was there beforehand. I doubt that it was. And if it had been, it would have said she'd had another concussion like that earlier on. Now, seeing this, again, I can't even get photos now, 6 years later. She's moved to like literally 2,000 miles away to another province. And so I'm not able to get follow-up photos of her now to see how well this is healed up. This could potentially go away with the right support. With the right support. It may not go all the way away because there may be residual damage that cannot be healed. Right. And so this is an indication of a serious trauma, And like I said, in this young lady's case, it was actually a 3rd-degree concussion. Jaundice. Now, I'm not sure how well your computer screens are going to show this. This is actually something that medical personnel watch for as well. Can you see on your screen that there's a yellowish haze here? And a bit of a yellowish haze here as well. If you can see that, give me a thumbs up. Let me know you can see that. Okay. And I know it's visible on the Facebook feed. I'm hoping that those of you who are with me on the webinar are also seeing it. The internet is very slow today, but I'd love it if someone who's with me on the webinar can tell me, do you see this? Yes, yes. Julie's got some questions. She's not sure. Tanya says she can see it. Okay, so Julie's not sure what she's looking at. And it might be the color resolution on your monitor. Okay, in this case, it's on the computer I'm working on now. It's not a really prominent yellow. On my main desktop computer, it is really quite yellow. So a lot of this, whether you see this or not, can be dependent on your computer monitor. Now, this is an indication of jaundice. Jaundice is a liver condition where the liver is not conjugating the bilirubin properly. And bilirubin that is not conjugated certainly it doesn't get excreted properly. It builds up in the blood and it turns the whites of the eyes yellow. Okay. And sometimes if it's not really serious, it'll just be a little bit patchy like this. If it's more advanced, if it's more prominent, the whole eyeball will look like it was dipped, almost dipped in something yellow. Okay. When we see jaundice, it warrants a conversation. We cannot diagnose why the jaundice exists, but at least when we see it, we know the liver has some things going on with it. So we can ask questions about health history, about diet, about lifestyle. Now, this was an older fellow. He was in his late 60s. He doesn't drink alcohol. He takes supplements. He's not on any meds, but his liver is clearly unhappy. So when we see this, we actually don't want to touch it to begin with. We want this client to go to a doctor, get some labs done so that we can understand what is going on. Have that client bring those lab tests back to us. Now, this is important. This is important because this can be an indicator of very, very serious conditions that we may not legally be allowed to work with per se. And so as long as the client has had that medical diagnosis and is seeking medical treatment, we can then do other things around that to possibly help the medical treatments be more effective. Until our client brings those results back to us, some simple things we can do: make sure they're drinking enough water, make sure they're getting sunshine every day, because we know that natural sunlight helps to conjugate the bilirubin. And we know that they need to be getting adequate sleep. They should also never fast. They should not go without solid food, because solid food also helps the body to deal with this bilirubin. A spiral vessel. So I've drawn a little what a spiral vessel looks like, and you can see one right here. Okay. If you can see this spiral vessel, just put spiral in the comments box. Give me spiral in the comments box. Let me know that you can see that. Excellent, good job. All right, so when we see a spiral, it suggests that there is a potential for something to go on with the blood pressure. Now, without more information and without seeing the rest of the eye, it's hard to know, is this suggesting this person is going towards high blood pressure or towards low blood pressure? Having said that, when we see the spiral vessel, we are going to have a conversation. You're going to hear me say that a million gazillion times, right? We need to know about their personal and family history for health. We need to know this client's diet. We need to know this client's lifestyle. Are they on any medications? What's going on in their life stress-wise? How are their adrenal glands, right? We need to ask those kinds of questions, particularly if this person has come in with concerns about blood pressure, right? We want to dig deep, and this would be an indication. If they say, I'm concerned about my blood pressure, I haven't had it checked in a long time, but I'm concerned because my parents have elevated blood pressure and have had that for many years. My siblings also have the problem. I don't want to go there. What do I do? Well, we look in the eyes and we see this and we go, yeah, you have a predisposition towards that. Let's see what's going on here. I actually have a blood pressure cuff. It's one of those automatic ones. So when the client puts it on, we hit the button, it automatically inflates. And then because I don't want to diagnose their high blood pressure, I'm not licensed to do that. I have them tell me what the numbers are on the screen. And then I show my clients an article that shows what is healthy blood pressure. What's the healthy blood pressure range? And I have them evaluate, where are you in the range? Are you below it? Are you in it? Are you above it? And so they diagnose for themselves, and that's their right. They can say anything they want. They diagnose for themselves if they have a blood pressure issue. And if they do, then of course we're going to dive into those questions and find out what's going on. We may, if this client has blood pressure issues, if it's too low, we will want to support the adrenals. Actually, we probably want to do that if it's too high as well. But if it's too high, then we maybe want to start them on some arginine right away to vasodilate them a bit to bring the blood pressure down a tad while we actually dig to find out, why is this happening? Why does this person have high blood pressure? Is it plaque in the arteries? Is it a kidney issue? Is it an adrenal gland issue? Is it a dietary thing? I once had a client who came to me. She had so many allergies, she was down to eating only 5 different foods. She was young, she was in her 20s, she was a trained opera singer, and that was how she made her living, by singing. And she wanted help with the allergies, but while we were working, she said, I've got a new problem. My blood pressure's off the charts. And we looked again at those 5 foods, which I had forgotten since our first meeting. One of them was licorice. Her favorite thing to do was to get the double salt black licorice. Well, licorice in and of itself can drive the blood pressure up, right? And the salt, if you're susceptible, is going to add to that. So I asked her to do an experiment, and I said, I'm going to suggest that you cut out all of the black licorice for 10 days and see what happens. Oh, but I only have, that leaves me with 4 foods I can eat. I said, I know, but the licorice is probably doing this to you. She came back after 10 days and she said, how did you know that the licorice was causing the blood pressure? I said, well, I'm supposed to know those things, right? And so we were able to begin working to expand her food repertoire. A meandering vessel, a meandering vessel. When we look for a meandering vessel, what we are looking for is a vessel in the eye that looks like you're in an airplane looking down and you see a little creek weaving its way through farmland, right? Isn't that what this looks like? A little creek weaving its way through farmland, right? So first question here is, what would you like my help with? And then we check out the iris for indicators to give us information and begin asking questions. And we check out the pupil and we check out the sclera, right? Because depending on what he wants help with, the information that we need and the insight that we need for the questions we need to ask could be in any one of those areas. When we see this, this suggests circulatory congestion. The thicker this is, the more congestion we're likely looking at. And so again, I need to know about his diet, his lifestyle. I want to ask about his circulatory system in general. I'm going to ask him about blood pressure. I'm going to ask him about cholesterol levels. Not that those are the only things, but they add a layer of information to what we are doing. And so I'm also then going to correlate this to the organ in whose reaction field this is sitting to talk about that organ specifically. Right? So this is giving us a lot more information to work with. And I call this layering. We are layering up the information. What does the client want help with? That's our first thing. What does the iris say? That's our second thing. What does the pupil say? That's our third thing. What does the sclera say? That's our fourth thing. And then intertwined with all of that is talking to the client to understand, to get more information, to understand their diet, their lifestyle, and why these things are happening. Again, if we address this appropriately and do all the right homework, this should at least become finer and soften. Okay. It could possibly go away if it hasn't been there for very long. This is a gentleman who's in his 70s. I'm assuming, because of what I know about his lifestyle, that this has probably been there for 25 or 30 years. It's probably not going to go away. But we can minimize it. And this is a case where when we see the improvement in the sclera, we know we're having improvement in the body. You know, everyone wants their irides to change, right? Well, I see the change in my irides. Well, no, because that's inherent. Will you see the change in your sclera? Possibly, because this is significantly more dynamic. But it's not easy. It's not take one capsule of a herb and it's gone by morning, right? Here we're looking at a Pinguecula, and this doesn't show up as well as I would like it to. And that's just photography. So in this upper picture in the upper right-hand corner, can you see that this piece of her eye looks a bit different? And can you see in this eye, it looks a little bit different over here as well? Again, really hard to see in the blow-up pictures right here and right here. This is called a Pinguecula. This is a development on the surface of the eye that does not wipe off. It's benign. It usually happens near the 15-minute mark and near the 45-minute mark. So we actually have a little bit of it here as well, but I didn't bring that up in a blow up. This is an accumulation of protein and fat and calcium. So it suggests that there are some issues with metabolism of proteins, fats, and calcium. So when we see that this is a bit on the yellow side, or they can be actually pretty yellow, it always is going to tie back to the liver and how the liver metabolizes fats. Now that's most interesting because we have this slight yellow in these markings, ever so slight. The name here, Tina Marie, is Pinguecula. Pinguecula. I love saying that. It's a fun word. And so what this is going to tell us, again, liver predisposition, but when we look at the eyes and just overall, there's a lot of liver predisposition in here. So we've got a lot of inherent tendency here for the liver to be cranky and to be out of balance and to put pressure on other organs. And we have it manifesting as dynamically that the liver is unhappy, that it does want support, that it needs a little bit of love. And so when we look at the sclera, this is saying very dynamically, yes, we need to be talking about this and we need to be working to reverse that. There is some speculation that these may be able to be dissolved with a good enough diet, but I've never seen one dissolve. So whether my clients didn't do everything they needed to, or whether they maybe just don't always dissolve, right? All right. Fantabulous. So, you know, when we look at all of this, we look at the iris, we look at the pupil, we look at the sclera. Some health professionals just want to learn this, right? They just want to put this into their belt as a tool that they can use. And that's fabulous. After professionals learn this, here's what they usually find: that iridology helps them to do their assessments more quickly, that it helps them to be more accurate. I mean, you could see that the kind of information and the directions that the sclera takes us in, it helps us develop better and faster rapport, because now we're taking where the client wants us to start and we're digging deep very specifically. We're not asking shotgun pattern questions that are all over the map. We are very specifically lasering in on the things that the client has asked for help with. And when we do this, it eliminates the need for an intake questionnaire. We still need a release form. We always get that signed waiver that says our client knows we're not a doctor, we can't diagnose, we can't prescribe, if indeed that is our situation. But because we are using iridology in this way, it helps us to ask the right questions. And so we don't actually need an intake form anymore, which is really cool. I've never had a client complain about not having to fill in a questionnaire, just saying. And they always say at the end of an appointment, I feel like you actually listened to me. That's not what they're getting from other practitioners, but the iridology, again, helps us to understand the questions to ask that will be meaningful to our clients so that we can understand their bodies better. The dynamic iridology assessment system is coming up. It starts again on February 9th. And it is the only live, online, fully mentored course for nutritionists, herbalists, and naturopaths who want to streamline their clinical work without sacrificing client care. It is also the only program that gives you unlimited support even after you graduate, right? We continue to have mentoring sessions twice a month for all of my students and my grads. I don't care when they graduated. If they want to come to the mentoring session, if they've got a question or a case to discuss, they are welcome to come. They're invited, they're encouraged to come. And the purpose of the dynamic iridology assessment system course is to teach iridology and pupil work and sclerology, so that you as a practitioner, if you've been developing your client programs on your own time, you can now get them done in your client session, and you can get them done in a way that your client can easily follow without feeling overwhelmed. Why would you want to do that? If your client feels overwhelmed, they're not going to be able to do it, and they're not going to come back to tell you they failed. If you've given them a program that they can actually do and be successful with, even if it's not the complete answer, but it's the first good step, they're going to come back and say, I did it. I'm feeling like you said I would. What comes next? Right? And so really, really important if you're working on building your practice and your clientele. Here's, if you want to learn more than just iris markers, if you want to learn how the iris markers play off each other, we looked at that one that had the Pinguecula and talked about there were markers in the eye that talked about liver. And if you want to be mentored in creating programs for your clients, and if you do want that long-term mentoring support, just join me for an info webinar that's coming up. But let me know you want to come to the webinar. Drop me a private message in the chat here or in the Facebook group, or shoot me an email, and I'll send you an invitation to that webinar. Here's what one of my students, Sky Fibke, said. She is a master herbalist, and she's got some other good credentials under her belt. She's very young to be a master herbalist, isn't she? I'm so proud of her. She said, I could not have asked for a better layout for learning. I was unable to make it to the scheduled classes, but the recordings of the classes were amazing. I loved the weekly quizzes. I am glad to know that I always have you and my iridology community to turn to if anything ever comes up where I may be challenged. Thank you for being a part of my journey and for all the support you provided. You did not miss one detail at all. One of my recent course grads, Dawn, sent me this. I would like to thank you so much for all you've done to help me on my iridology journey. I appreciate your teaching skill, your follow-up, your availability, and all the time you spend presenting and marking. I am blessed to have you in my life. Dawn is a recently retired school teacher. She understands good teaching when she sees it. And I'm so excited that she has completed the course. She is now working on the certification steps, which is really exciting for me. I love mentoring my students at any stage of the game, but when they want to certify, I really love getting my hands dirty with them and just making sure they're totally on track. Karen Cho is a certified natural health practitioner, and she specializes in gut health. She sent this to me after she had completed her coursework. I just returned to a regenerative detoxification course where Iridology is implemented. I spread the word about what a wonderful teacher you are. Most people I talked with did not have anywhere near the same experience with their iridology education, no support, unanswered questions, and a lot of confusion. Mostly they finished their classes not knowing how to implement what they had learned. I feel so absolutely blessed to have been taught by you. I feel totally supported even still, as I've graduated almost 4 years ago now. I don't think there's anyone out there practicing, educating, and teaching iridology like you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I'm eternally grateful for your never-ending patience and support. This is the kind of support I give. It's not just 2 hours of class once a week for 20 weeks. This is mentorship. Mentorship. It's a course that includes the mentorship, which is what so many programs don't offer. If you are interested in getting more information specifically for yourself about the course and you want to skip the idea of doing a webinar at the end of the month with me, I invite you to use this URL, tinyurl.com/insight-call. Schedule a call with me. Let's have a phone conversation and let's see if this is something that really is a good fit for you right now. I'm going to tell you, it's not a hard sell. I've talked with many people, and in talking with them, I can see it's not a good fit right now. So I'll coach them as to what I think would be a better next step for them. And then I keep in touch with them so that when they're ready, when they're ready to come into dynamic iridology, I'm ready to take them. But I want to make sure that it is a good fit. Right? There's nothing more disappointing for the student or the teacher than having a student jump into a course and have it not be the right fit and the student drops out. Right? I don't like it when that happens, and it does happen sometimes. So if you are interested in learning iridology, if what I've shared with you about the sclera today is resonating with you, if what I've shared with you about the upcoming course resonates with you, then either let me know you want to come to the next webinar, or get registered to have a little 30-minute phone chat with me, and let's see what direction we need to head in. That's been a lot of fun. I hope that today was useful for you. I hope that you've gained some insight as to the depth of doing an iris assessment, that it's not 1 mark equals 1 problem, and that you now see that it's very multidimensional, that there are many ways to gather information from the eyes. And when we tie all of those ways together, it is to our client's benefit. So with that, my friends, I look forward to hopefully speaking with you on the phone very soon, or perhaps seeing you in the next webinar, the next launch webinar, where we introduce the course. And I hope you have a lovely day. Talk to you soon. Bye for now.